G'day guys, 1220 here and welcome back to Springwood. Big thanks to everybody who has been contributing to the Springwood Wiki page. It has been up for 1 week and man, it is just incredible the amount of creativity and stories and inputs that people have been putting into it. If you haven't checked it out or if you're unaware of the wiki page, go and check it out at the end of this episode because I dare say there's going to be plenty of opportunities to add more to the story of Springwood. But I will be going into that a little bit more later down the track in this episode. So I'm going to kick things off by showing you whereabouts we are building today. So like I said before, plenty of opportunities to create more of the Springwood story. We are going to be finishing off a suburb that I started last week and also starting a new suburb just down this bottom corner here, as well as creating a very unique suburb that I've been wanting to build for quite a while. And this suburb is super unique because it is a suburb that is completely deserted. And this build is actually completely inspired by somebody who wrote in a couple of weeks ago and asked if I'd had any idea of this abandoned suburb that was in the LA district right next to LAX. If you're unfamiliar with Surfridge and Palisade Del Rey, I think I'm saying that correctly, but they're basically two suburbs that lie right next to LAX, and you might notice it if you fly into LA, or if you live in LA, you might be aware of it. Essentially, this is a suburb that was built back in the 1920s. When the suburb was first developed, it was a very secluded, quiet, but very booming district for a lot of the wealthier residents of LA. So a lot of mansions were basically being built around this area. And, that was pretty good for a while, but then, LAX started to expand and the jumbo jets started to increase and, the location just was not ideal for people who were buying up in that area. So eventually it was sold to LAX and the whole area was demolished. And leaving behind were these roads and the lampposts and some walls that were left from the buildings. And if you know me, if you've been following my channel, you know that I bloody love abandoned stuff. So totally up my alley, this place, and I really wanted to build it. And especially now that I've pretty much completed the airports, I've had in my mind the perfect place to place it down. So I'm not going to follow it entirely, completely to what Surfridge looks like. However, I'm going to be taking a lot of inspiration from that area. And this is where you guys can come into play because there is no story in my mind for this area. Whether or not it has the same story as Surfridge, where LAX might have bought up this area to expand on the airport, or maybe people were relocating because of the noise of the airport. Jump onto the wiki and you can actually start creating that story for this area as of now. I highly suggest you go and check out the Discord chat. There's actually 2 wiki chats going on at the moment. One is for suggestions or to share some images that you might have been creating for the wiki, and the other one is for a lot of back and forth chats in terms of bouncing ideas from one another. So go and check it out and start coming up with the story of this area. I think there's a lot of possibilities, and I'm really interested to see the sort of stuff you come up with. So this is me starting to map out whereabouts I'm going to be building it, and you saw me place down some districts, some roads to kind of plan out where I'm going to be putting out some of the suburbs. And I was following a very unconventional grid, and I usually try and stick with a quite a square grid when I'm planning my city. And I've been doing that because that is the classic grid style. However, when you sort of get out of the cities, a lot of the grid sort of changes, and it seems to be back in the 50s, there was a bit of a trend to make a lot of these suburbs to have these winding roads. And at first I thought they were quite a modern take on the grids of a city. However, it seemed to be something that was kind of done a long time ago. So I've been trying to expand on that and use a lot of these winding grids around these areas as we are getting out of the main city of Springwood, which is pretty exciting, to be honest. This is the furthest we have built from Springwood, and I will be showing some cinematics at the end of the episode to show how far away we really are, because we are so far away from the downtown, it's ridiculous. This might even be the furthest we get. This might even, I don't know if I'm going to build any further away in this area. Like maybe some, I don't know, I do have in mind to maybe place down some vineyards and some outer country areas around this hillside. That is for some later episodes, and I even have a road that I start dragging out. You might have saw that road just before, but it drags out into that hillside, and that'll be a project for way down the track when we start expanding off into this area. But for now, I'm going to just finish off this district in this area and in this episode, and the next episode I'm going to head back into the city and work on some other stuff. That's a lot of information for you right there. What I'm doing right now is I'm actually working on this surf ridge area, and I'm still following that grid-like pattern, that real wavy grid-like pattern, and I am noticing this in looking at some images of surf ridge where they do follow this. It's way wavy, it's all over the place, and I think that's a real trend in architecture and city planning, and I actually really like it. I think it's a really interesting and unique way of planning out a grid. So I'm trying to find the flow and trying to find a bit of a technique to map out that area, and it takes a little bit of time. It's not as easy as just dragging one road straight and then intersecting with another one. And I didn't really want to make this suburb look like it's totally separated from everything else. I wanted it to make it look like it was once a thriving place, once just a suburb like anywhere else around here, and is then now recently, or not recently, but has been fenced off for some reason. I'm also placing down some unique style of lights, because I didn't really want just the regular lights, street lights that is, to be placed around here. I wanted this area to look like it had a bit of wealth behind it. So these street lights are actually quite fancy, and also these, leaving just a couple of remnants of houses behind as well. I've also made sure that this suburb lies directly underneath the flight path of the one of the runways around here. So when you actually watch the cinematics, you'll see that planes will fly exactly over this area. I wanted that to have some sort of influence to the reason why this might have been abandoned, and to really make it look like it wouldn't, it has definitely changed over time. And also, like, it being up on this hill, this is a much steeper hill than Surf Ridge is, and I actually really wanted that. I really wanted that this district to have been completely planned out and to have just been built all of a sudden. It hasn't really expanded over time. It has just been a real planned out, thought out district, and it has been abandoned, not over time, but it's just a sudden abandonment. And a lot of the houses have been cleared. I'm going to be adding some houses in eventually, just to show that some places still exist around here. However, this district is totally unused anymore. In terms of what I end up placing around this district, the neighborhoods that I work on after this, I wanted to make it look like it was very different to the districts. I keep saying district. The neighborhoods around Springwood. Because we are out of the city, I didn't really want too much clutter. I didn't want too much closeness of the buildings. I really wanted to really emphasize the space and how large the properties can be around here. So the houses are a lot different to the ones that I've been placing down, especially to the ones that I placed down in the last episode. And they're definitely not as detailed as I usually go. However, they are quite detailed. I didn't really want to focus too much on detailing these suburbs. I really wanted to focus on just a massive growth. And in saying that as well, I'm trying to work on just working on a particular neighborhood and establishing the feeling of that neighborhood, because I think that after this episode, I'm going to get a lot of people jumping onto the wiki and creating that story. And I don't think you're going to be able to create a story if I just build a couple of houses. You need the whole neighborhood, you need the whole feeling of the area. So stick around for the end, because you will see me totally base this area out and figure out exactly the feeling of it in terms of what I think. And then your job is to jump onto the Discord and chat about it, because, you know, as much as this is my series that I am creating, and, you know, there's a lot of input from my imagination going into these builds, a lot of what you guys end up putting into the channel shapes what I build in the next episode. So if you talk about the story in a way that I wasn't really planning, then that inspires me, and it makes me think about what else I can be placing down to contribute to your input into the story. That's kind of like the whole idea behind Springwoods. You know, like, I don't really do that in any other of my series. This series is totally about collaboration and about working through this whole city with you guys, and to you know, get a real idea of what your impressions are of this city and how you can also shape it. We shape it together, which is kind of cool. And the stuff coming out of the wiki, I know I've already spoken about this, but it's really quite incredible, the amount of work that people are putting into creating the stories, and also the images that people are creating in terms of the metro system, and images for emblems and, you know, billboards and all this sort of stuff that is getting put into it. It's so incredible. I really love all the stuff that's going in. And if you want any say in it, you have to jump onto it, because it goes quite quick. And, you know, you don't want to miss out on your opportunity to shape how this city ends up being. Also, I'm very close to start sending off my billboards for Springwood to a couple of people who are going to probably work on the billboards for me. They're going to go into the city sooner than later. So if you would like an input, if you'd like your billboard featured in Springwood, part of the story, definitely go and check out the Discord, and you can add your billboard, your images to that area. And we're getting some really interesting stuff. We're getting some stuff that is making connections to things that I've already built, and billboards that are totally unique or make reference to one thing that I've said in an episode. There's still so many gaps, there's so many things that could be said in terms of creating news channels, or, you know, creating billboards for upcoming events, or even connections to other YouTubers or asset creators. So we're very close to uploading them to the actual city. So if you want to get involved, definitely do that sooner than later. All these things that I'm talking about are left in the description below. And so damn exciting. It's very exciting to finally put all these ideas that I've been thinking about into practice, and to get such a warm response from you guys. Massive thanks. You've seen me place down some of the buildings that I wanted to put down in this area, and to create that abandoned feeling, I have placed some boards against the windows just to show that they are no longer in use. I kind of feel like there may be, these buildings are probably going to get demolished at some stage, but they're just left there. And now, by the way, you can see these. You can see quite a lot of floating props at the moment. Just I get rid of them. they don't really work. I keep the props. I get rid of the tufts of grass that are just floating above the ground. I couldn't quite get it flush to the ground, which is quite annoying. So I end up getting rid of it. What else am I going to talk about? Also, there is a competition on the Discord channel. The competition is another billboard challenge where we've asked people to create a billboard for advertising a Game Boy, and we've had quite a lot of entries, and you have one more week to put in your entries for that challenge. Whoever wins that will get access to some special features on Discord, as well as have their billboard featured in one of the episodes of Springwood. So get involved. That finishes next week, and you know, there are some people who've created some really incredible billboards already. In terms of what I'm doing on screen right now, and this suburb is not complete, so don't go and write any stories behind it on the wiki. This is just the beginning of this suburb. I just wanted to place these buildings down to get more of a feeling of this area before moving on. I will revisit this area eventually, but this suburb is a work in progress. This is just the start of it. But these houses, a lot of people have been asking about them through all my social platforms. But I worked on creating these retro houses over the last couple of weeks in Asset Editor, and I've just been basically using a lot of vanilla buildings, a lot of buildings that I've found on the workshop, and just editing them in Asset Editor to basically have a much more of a retro feel to them. And a lot of people want me to release them onto the workshop. I have thought about it, however, it does take a bit of time. It's not as easy as just uploading it, 5 minutes, upload it to the workshop. If I'm going to upload it, it's going to take a little while, and I'm just a little bit strapped for time at the moment. Plus, unless you're creating a retro city, they're not going to be that useful to you. So I'm kind of just reluctant to start uploading them. Maybe if I get some extra time, I will, but at this stage, probably not. I just want to focus on working on the channel and getting some more content out for you on a regular basis. This is a suburb that I've been speaking about before. This is a suburb that I completely finished, so you can add a lot to the story of this one because it is quite unique, and I wanted to establish a lot of unique parts to it. These buildings have a much bigger footprint than the other buildings I've been using. A lot of the standard buildings I've been placing down in Springwood have followed 2x4 footprints, whereas these ones are much lighter. They're 4x4, and I wanted to do that on purpose because this area is a much more affluent area. A lot of people around this area own mansions, and we are out of the city now. This is a suburb that is sprawling over the hillside, so they can cover a lot more ground. In terms of detail, these ones I have actually gone into Asset Editor and detailed myself to have, again, a retro feel to them. However, I did not detail them as much as I have detailed other buildings in Asset Editor. These ones are sort of like semi-detailed, so I don't go into huge amounts of detail work in detailing these suburbs. A lot of the word detail mentioned right now, but I just wanted to pump out this suburb and get the feeling of this general area. And in terms of the general feeling of this area, I'm looking at the outer suburbs of LA because, this is a sort of idea that we're going for. I'm trying to get the idea of we're out of the city, we're not in there. And the structure of these suburbs are very different to the structure of the suburbs within a city. Like I said before, they're much more open space, so that is what I'm trying to go for. And I'm also trying to go for a lot more of an affluent area. And we're only just into the affluent area. When pretty close to this area, this suburb, is districts that are very close to a very noisy airport, which I don't think is very ideal, and the suburbs are a lot more run down. Whereas this one is quite not far away, but it's up in the mountains, it's winding around this beautiful area, and it is actually close to the highway. It is close to a lot of services that you'll see me place down just in a little while. So I wanted to kind of, establish that feel. So looking out of the suburbs of LA really helped with getting that idea down. And I was struggling with these suburbs because these houses I felt like were quite modern, and this style of sprawling suburbs was a modern sort of take on like residence. And I, because this being a city based in the 80s, I didn't really know if that really fits. However, you'll be surprised at how much of a growth there was in cities back in the 80s or back in the 70s, and a lot of these suburbs actually established back then. So this style of house, whereas they look quite modern, they are actually quite old, and I don't think the architecture has changed huge amounts since then. I'm sure architects are disagreeing with me right now, but as far as I can tell, I can get away with these style of houses because they are still quite similar to the ones that were built back in the 70s, and this sort of idea of sprawling suburbs like this, it's still quite, this still is quite fitting for this area, for this time frame. And what I'm doing right now is I wanted to, like I said before, this whole idea of this neighborhood was to establish that neighborhood. So to establish that, I needed to place down some sort of commercial area, because a lot of suburbs, a lot of neighborhoods will have this as a base for a lot of the services, a lot of the cafes and grocery stores and fire brigade and police. So it's really important that I established that as well. And a lot of people within this suburb will work around here and will access this area on a daily basis. So I wanted to establish that. Even though I don't go into heaps of detail for this area, I wanted to definitely get a feeling of this neighborhood and what it was like living in this area. And you can probably tell that I've placed down a couple of more retro style buildings. That shop that was just released onto the workshop, it was a Chips. It's called Chips. It's very, very cool, and it's a very 50s building. And 50s is great because it's only like 20 years difference to the 80s. Sorry, 30 years difference to the 80s. And I'm finding retro buildings just really works, and I'm really loving sticking with that 80s feel at the moment. I'm referencing it much more than I have ever in the past, which is kind of exciting and something that I'm really into right now. And I'm just placing down like the biggest buildings first, and placing down the most important buildings. So we have a fire station, we have a police station, relatively large police station, community college, a high school, a primary school I'll place down very shortly, a Target, and just general shops. I wanted to get the feeling of older shops and newer shops, because this area has been around for a little while, and I wanted to get the feeling of the old style houses around here as well. Oh man, so much rambling. And there's so much to add to the story of this, and it is so exciting to kind of place down all this and think about what kind of things people are going to come up with. And I think in terms of the wiki, I think it's really cool that every time I build something, people are going to jump on and then pretty much finish the story off. So half of what I do right now, half of the idea of this suburb right now is built, and then the story is then built later on, and that is quite cool. And I'm hoping that a lot more comes out of this area for the stories that get made in the wiki, so that when you jump on and check it out, you'll be able to get a better idea of what it's like in this suburb and the sort of people that might kind of live around here. But we are getting kind of close to the end of the episode now, and before I say my final words, just want to give you a quick reminder. We are very close to uploading the billboards to the actual city, so definitely get your entries in as soon as possible so that you can have your mark on the series. If you want to get involved in the competition for that, jump onto the Discord and join the chat there. I should say, I am lacking in some buildings, and if you are an asset creator and you would like to create some buildings for me for Springwood, I would really love that, because I'm struggling to find some more Spanish style buildings. A lot of people are creating Spanish style influences in the wiki, and I need to add to that story by building some more Spanish style buildings. So if you are interested, or if you want to point me in the direction of some buildings that are a bit more influenced by Spain, hit me up. I'm desperate. I'm kind of lacking in that. And that is pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait to see your opinions and to find out the story behind this area as we add to that wiki page. Man, if I had $1 for every time I said the word wiki today. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next episode. See you later.